I was traveling down a deserted, pitch-black highway in the middle of nowhere. Because of the moon's game of hide-and-seek with the thick clouds, I could hardly see farther than a few feet in front of me. The soft hum of my car was the only sound I had company in. I knew I had to find a service station because the E mark on my gas gauge was dangerously close. Up ahead, I at once saw a blinking sign with the neon-lit words, "Last Chance Gas." It looked like it had been abandoned since the Stone Age, but it sounded good. As I rolled into the rocky parking area, I sighed in relief. There was no question that the area was a landfill. The building itself had seen better days, and the pumps inside the station were rusty and creaky. A buzzing fluorescent light above the door cast unsettling shadows on the deteriorated asphalt. I gripped the nozzle and started pumping the gas. The night was quiet, and the fuels gushing made a waterfall-like sound. As I stood there, I felt as though someone was watching me. Yes, that's how I felt, like when your neck feels prickle-like. I quickly looked around in an effort to shake off my unease. I figured I was just having a wild imagination since the area was deserted. The sound of gentle shuffling footsteps on gravel caught my attention when I first heard it. When I turned around, no one was there. My voice trembled a little as I greeted her. Exactly nothing. Only the winds rustling through the lone trees can be heard. Shaking my head, I put it down to worry. Possibly, I went too far. I chose to enter the gas station in an effort to relax and possibly find a worker to chat with. The bell above the door started to jingle as I walked in. Without the musty smell and sputtering fluorescent lights, the location was already unsettling. I shouted again, "Hey, anyone here?" I moved toward the counter, making my steps echo against the dirty linoleum. A small TV monitor behind the counter displayed surveillance video. While I waited, I made the decision to review it. There's a chance I'll be able to see what was making those strange noises. My coffee nearly fell out of my hand as I leaned closer to the monitor when I saw it. The screen displayed a figure sneaking through the pitch-black gas station. It was a man, or at least it looked like a man, but he was bent over like a twisted gargoyle. His fingers twitched as he moved jerkily and awkwardly through the aisles. I was unable to take my eyes off the screen as a cold sweat started to form on my forehead. With growing anxiety, I watched the figure come closer to the camera and wondered what the hell was going on. In addition to the monitor flickering, the screen went black. I swore in my head and hit the counter. As I turned my back on the monitor, I heard those shuffled footsteps again, but this time they were coming from behind me. My heart stopped beating in my chest as I slowly turned around. Nearby to me was a man who was standing. However, this man wasn't your typical man. His face was contorted into a hideous mask of twisted features, and his eyes shone with a devilish light. His clothes were stained and torn, and his fingers ended in long, jagged nails. I stumbled back as my breath became stuck in my throat. "Who? Identify yourself." He didn't say anything but continued to look at me with those unwavering, predatory eyes. The bell rang menacingly as I sprinted for the door in a fit of panic. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel as I sped away from that lonely gas station, my heart pounding in my chest. Thoughts of that twisted figure with the menacing eyes tormented me, but the open road and the first rays of dawn brought some solace. As the miles went by, I couldn't get rid of the unsettling impression that something evil was still lurking behind me in the night shadows. Every sound of the wind in the leaves and every flicker of the car's headlights on the road seemed to mock my creative thought. But as the sun rose higher in the sky and I could see the promise of civilization, I overcame my fear and concentrated on getting away from that nightmare gas station. After several hours, I arrived in a busy city with bustling streets. The reassuring presence of other people took over as the memory of the gas station started to fade. I pulled up to a quaint coffee shop and parked my car there, where the aroma of new brew and the sound of friendly conversation provided comfort. I ordered a hearty breakfast and told the locals about my terrifying experience while sitting at a corner table. Their expressions ranged from shock to worried nods, but one elderly man with wrinkles and age on his face leaned in closer to listen. He spoke in a low voice, "You were lucky to get out of there. You know, that location has a troubled past. Despite having been abandoned for a while, strange things have been known to occur there. People claim that it is haunted. I couldn't help but lean in for a closer listen to hear more after the word haunted sent a chill down my spine. The man continued, his eyes a mixture of caution and fascination. The gas station allegedly used to be a rest stop for travelers, but a terrible incident is said to have occurred there long ago. Tragic, they claim. It's believed that the souls of those who perished there tragically still linger, caught between this world and their afterlife. The customers of the cafe exchanged knowing looks as the words hung heavy in the air. It appeared that the gas station was hiding secrets that were much darker than I had thought. I couldn't help but wonder if the figure I had seen was not even a living thing, but rather a manifestation of those imprisoned souls. The sun was high in the sky and illuminating the town as I stepped outside the cafe. Though the horrors of the previous night were gradually fading from my memory, a nagging unease persisted. I kept looking behind me as I traveled, half expecting to see that twisted figure emerge from the shadows. A haunting reminder that there are places in this world where the line separating reality and the unknown is thinner than we can ever imagine. The gas station and the ominous presence would stick with me. I couldn't help but think about the tragic past of that abandoned place and the ghosts that might still reside there with each mile that passed. It was a story that I had stumbled upon by accident, a story that would linger in my thoughts for years to come, a story that would forever make me wonder about the nature of the unexplained, and the darkness that can lurk in the most unexpected places in the world. I was traveling along that solitary stretch of road where the trees appeared to be concealing something as they leaned in close. The darkness pressed against the windows of my car like a weight that night because there was no moon. The only solace I could find was the classic rock station on my car radio. My attention was briefly diverted from the ominous atmosphere outside by the comforting sounds of Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin filling the cabin, but as I continued to travel down that lonely road, the music suddenly stopped and was replaced by a tinny, static-filled hum that chilled my spine. I scowled and fiddled with the knobs in an effort to reclaim the calming effect of the music. But the hum changed into raspy, whispering voices that seemed to come from the very ground beneath my tires. As I struggled to understand what was being said, my body tensed and a chill ran down my spine. Without thinking, my hands jerked the wheel to the right as one evil, insistent voice hissed, "Turn right, now!" It appeared as though I was powerless to stop myself. The voices murmured louder and louder, their urgent tones unsettling. They let me know that they were there to help me and that the path ahead was hazardous. They also advised me to stay off the main highway. As I tried to process the bizarre reality that was happening in my car, panic overcame me. Who were these voices, and how on earth did they manage to completely take over my radio? I followed their instructions despite feeling increasingly uneasy as I detoured off the main highway and onto a maze of side roads. "Beware of the fork in the road," a desperate-sounding voice warned me. I swerved to avoid a path that was blocked by a twisted mess of metal and debris just in time. It became more and more clear that these voices were guiding me away from danger rather than guiding me astray. Doubts began to creep into the corners of my mind as I kept doing as they told me. I began to wonder about these unseen helpers' identities, motivations for assisting me, and level of trustworthiness as the voices continued to be urgent and their words scraped at my ears like gravel. They were undoubtedly keeping me safe with every turn and swerve, though. An old, deserted gas station, a remnant of days gone by, then appeared on the horizon in a ghostly sight. Graffiti adorned its walls, its pumps were abandoned and rusted, and its windows were broken and lifeless. My car was filled with insistent voices that begged me to park there. As I approached the dilapidated station, the engine continued to run as my heart raced in my chest. I looked out the car window while experiencing some uneasiness. I then noticed them, 3 eerie figures emerging from the shadows. They wore hideous masks, each with twisted smiles, hollow eye sockets, and jagged teeth. Their clothes were tattered. I discovered they were the people behind the voices as they crept stealthily toward my car. Fear seized me as soon as I met the one in the middle's eyes, whose mask revealed piercing blue eyes and protruding teeth. My hands trembled as I briefly pondered my decision before cautiously opening the car door, unsure of what lay ahead of me. The three mask-wearing figures encircled me as I stepped onto the gravel. "What do you want?" I stammered, my voice shaking with a mixture of fear and confusion. The conversation was started by the person with the deformed grin, whose voice was muffled by the mask. "You've been brought to a place of reckoning." I became enraged and demanded, "What does that mean, and why have you brought me here?" They pounced on me without any prior notice, relentless in their attack. There were three of them, so despite my best efforts, I was quickly outmatched as I struggled and resisted. As they wrestled me to the ground, the taste of dirt and gravel filled my mouth. One of them hissed, "You should have stayed on the highway," in the midst of the confusion. When they were finished, they disappeared into the shadows without saying a word, leaving me bleeding, bruised, and all by myself. The horrifying reality that I had been tricked into a trap started to dawn on me at that point. It became evident as they vanished that the voices on the radio had not saved me, rather, they had placed me in danger. I was battered and bruised as I lay there in the eerie silence of that deserted gas station, hours passing by as if they were crawling. I was left to reflect on the terrible error of following the voices on the radio blindly after the masked attackers had disappeared into the night. They now held my belongings, including my wallet, phone, and any semblance of security. I eventually made it back to my car despite my aching limbs and racing head. I tried to tend to my wounds as best I could, my hands trembling as I reached for the first aid kit I always kept in the glove box. My phone had been stolen, along with my sense of security, so I had no way to call for assistance, which made me panic. The radio remained eerily silent, devoid of the voices that had led me into this nightmare as I sped away from that abandoned gas station. My mind was racing with unanswered questions as the night continued to be oppressive and the road appeared to go on forever. I couldn't help but replay the events of that fateful night in my head as I drove through the barren landscape. Why had those masked assailants ambushed me? Who were they? And what was their connection to the mysterious voices on the radio? The road continued, its turns and bends reflecting the maze of decisions I had made while under the influence of those unsettling voices. I tried to make sense of it all, but doubt kept eating away at my sanity. Had the voices been truly trying to protect me, only to lead me into a trap, or had they been malicious from the beginning? My headlights shone on the seemingly endless forest that bordered the road as the night grew darker. I was unable to shake the unsettling feeling that I was being watched and that the shadows held secrets I might never learn. The fear that had initially gripped me persisted, refusing to let go of its hold on my mind. Confusion and paranoia erupted in a vortex within my mind. The uncertainty gnawed at me, and I couldn't get rid of the feeling that I was caught in a nightmare loop. What if those masked figures came back? What if they were still waiting in the shadows, ready to strike again? I thought about the mystery that had become my life as the hours and miles drew closer together. A barren ribbon of asphalt that seemed to go on forever, the road in front of us was still empty. I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever truly escape the grip of that terrifying night, and if I would ever find the answers to the questions that tormented me. The lonely stretch of road seemed to go on forever, hiding its secrets from view in the shadows. And as I kept driving, I couldn't escape the unsettling knowledge that I had unintentionally become a pawn in a sinister game, one whose rules remained unknown and whose stakes were much higher than I could have ever imagined. I left on my own for a vacation in search of solitude and self-discovery, far from the busyness of the city. My destination was a small, picturesque town tucked away in the middle of a huge forest, renowned for its unspoiled natural beauty and tranquil surroundings. I valued the journey just as much as the final destination. I yearned for the open road and the sense of freedom that can only be experienced when you are far from a populated area. When I finally got on the road, it was a moonless night, and the thick cover of trees was casting long, ominous shadows over the winding path. As the hours went by, the repetitive engine hum started to soothe. The road continued on forever, its emptiness comforting in its own peculiar way. I knew it was time to find a place to rest as fatigue began to consume me. However, there were no motels or rest areas to be found along the lonely road. I had to rely on my gut feeling because my GPS wasn't much use in this remote area. I was so exhausted that I was unable to continue. Then, after pulling over onto a remote forest path by the side of the road, I decided to spend the night in my car. The leaves were softly rustling in the breeze as I parked the car beneath a large oak tree and turned off the engine. The night was silent, and everything around me was shrouded in darkness. I reassured myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but it still made me feel uneasy, like an old friend with a secret agenda. After all, I had always been the kind of person who found comfort in silence and solitude. In the safety of my car, I sank into the confined back seat and hoped for a restful sleep to wash over me. Only the sporadic hoot of an owl or the far-off cry of a coyote broke the forest's silence. I closed my eyes in an effort to escape from my discomfort and enter a world of dreams. I woke up in the middle of the night, desperately needing to go to the bathroom. I searched for my phone to look at the time while feeling groggy and confused. It was well past midnight, as the screen's dim glow indicated. I decided to leave the car and look for a suitable location in the woods after heaving a sigh of relief. The forest was shrouded in pitch blackness as I stumbled out of the car and moved in the direction of a nearby tree. I finished my business and couldn't help but look around nervously because the cold, damp air gave me a shiver. Since I had first parked here, I had become more alone, and I was certain that someone was keeping an eye on me. As I turned to face my car, my heart was thumping furiously in my chest. There were several Polaroid pictures protruding from the area under the windshield wiper. As I took each one in turn, my blood began to run cold. They were exterior photographs of me dozing off in the car. I was completely unaware of the ominous presence lurking in the shadows in each one, my eyes closed in peaceful slumber. I frantically searched the shadowy area around me as fear gripped me, but no one was to be found. I struggled to process what had happened as my breathing became shallow. Questions poured into my head. The forest seemed to close in around me, and I felt like prey being stalked by an unseen predator who had taken these photos. How had they managed to come close to me without my knowledge? My hands shook as I searched for my car keys and labored to turn the key in the ignition. I prayed for the engine to roar to life as each second seemed to last forever. The car obeyed, and I exhaled a sigh of relief. The path ahead is illuminated by my headlights as they pierce the night. The forest appeared to retreat as the light beam engulfed it. I sped up as I left that unsettling place, my heart still thumping. The horror of that night, however, stayed with me forever, serving as a terrifying reminder of the unknown dangers that lay in wait in the night. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, but the eerie event from that fateful night persisted in haunting me like a persistent ghost. When I was by myself, I could never get rid of the paranoia and sense of being watched. Sleep eluded me, being replaced by anxious dreams and sleepless nights. I started my own investigation in an effort to get to the bottom of the nightmare that had become my life and to find answers. I combed through news reports and police files looking for any similar incidents in the vicinity where I had parked my car that evening. It was a difficult task, but my perseverance kept me moving forward. I came across a startling realization one dark afternoon as I sat hunched over my computer, my fingers frantically typing in keywords and searching through articles. The area where I had stopped to sleep had seen a string of enigmatic disappearances. Similar to me, other travelers had vanished without a trace, leaving only unanswered questions and distraught families seeking closure. The mystery surrounding the missing people had the authorities perplexed and helpless. While some whispered of a malevolent presence hiding in the shadows, others speculated that the dense forest held secrets and dangers that we were unaware of. In this setting, superstition and dread prevailed over logical explanations. A horrifying realization started to hit me as the puzzle pieces started to fit together. There was a connection between those unsolved disappearances and the person who had taken those unsettling photos and watched me while I slept. I was tied to a darkness I had never imagined by an ominous thread that I was powerless to ignore. I felt my skin tingle at the thought. I couldn't understand how I had unknowingly avoided a fate worse than anything I could have imagined. The person behind the camera, who had so savagely invaded my privacy, was possibly the same person who was in charge of the missing tourists. The realization that I might be the only person alive to have seen this elusive predator filled me with dread. With every day that went by, my sense of responsibility grew. I had to take action to apprehend the enigmatic figure and put an end to the terror that stalked those woods, because I couldn't just let what had happened go. I contacted the authorities with renewed vigor, sharing the pictures and sharing my harrowing story. They said they would look into it, but I was aware that the forest was full of mysteries and that the truth might be difficult to find. I struggled to get rid of the feeling in the weeks that followed that I was being watched from the shadows and that everyone I moved was still being watched, but I didn't want to be overcome by fear. I decided to be a force for change, to reveal the mysteries that were shrouded in those woods, and to bring justice to the lost souls who had perished into the abyss. I was no longer content to be a passive observer. Little did I know that my search for answers would lead me deeper into the depths of the unknown, exposing a web of secrets and horrors beyond comprehension, and that my life would become intertwined with a chilling mystery that would push the boundaries of my bravery and resolve.